would be even better than what I predicted at 3-3. But as we've said over and over again, Davis Mills could be fantastic this season, and Stanford could still be a mediocre team. He went 2-4 in his 6 starts last season, and as we just described, he played pretty well. That's because we have serious questions about this defense and elsewhere on this roster. And with Paulson Adebo's opt-out, there is a severe lack of established playmakers on that side of the ball. We're losing a number of guys that we'll talk about. But we trust Lance Anderson and his defensive consistency. And yet, who's going to be that guy for Stanford on defense this season? Who is Stanford's most important defensive player in 2020? I think there's a lot of guys who are one of the guys. Is there anybody on that side of the ball that can be that guy?
Well, I'm going to go to what Lance Anderson is saying for that guy, right? And I think there is a pretty clear that guy if we listen to what they've been saying. And I'm going to look at the guy who's most ready for November 7th at 4:30 p.m. And I think that guy is Thomas Booker, right? In the offseason, Lance Anderson challenged the entire defense to be more physical. He wanted a more physical presence on the defense. And the first guy he named when asked that question, who has lived up to that potential? Thomas Booker. Thomas Booker's had a great offseason, had a great freshman and sophomore year, but has improved even more, was named a captain in his junior year, the only junior captain this season. He's so ready to take it on. He's a physical player. He's going to set the edge. He's going to do all of the things that they need out of the defensive end spot that Stanford absolutely needs to get pressure on the quarterback this season. Didn't do that at all last year. Both you and I talked about it. That's where a lot of their struggles started. If Thomas Booker can live up to his potential and even exceed his potential from what we've come to expect from him, Stanford could actually potentially have a decent year on defense and much better than we may have seen coming in the offseason.
I love that answer because I love Thomas Booker, and I think he's going to be an all Pac-12 level lineman this year. And I think he could be, and maybe should be, Stanford's best defensive lineman since Harrison Phillips in 2017, or have Stanford's best defensive line season since Harrison Phillips in 2017. And yet, I think as important as rushing the passer and defensive line play is going to be, I think Stanford's really been missing something in the middle of their defense. And so for me, the most important player on Stanford's defense this year is Curtis Robinson, a fifth-year inside linebacker, a former 5-star recruit who, when you look at that kind of talent coming out of high school, it hasn't necessarily equalized with the production he's had in college. But he showed flashes last year where he was second leading tackler. He had, I believe, 64 stops on the season, a few sacks as well, a few passes defended. He forced a couple fumbles. He was all over the field, but I think he has definitely a potential to take a significant next step this year. And I think for Stanford to have a good defense, assuming he stays healthy, Curtis Robinson needs to be over 100 tackles and over 5 sacks on the season because I think Stanford's going to need that ball. Well, sorry, I'm doing math on a normal season. So let's say if it's 100 tackles on a normal season, 50 tackles in a 6-game season. I got too excited about that. But 50 tackles in a 6-game season would represent significant uptick in linebacker production from last season when Stanford, frankly, was not getting a whole lot out of that position. We have not had sideline-to-sideline athletic linebackers in some time. Yes, Curtis Robinson was on the field, but I think Andrew Pritz and others were kind of taking the lead role in that middle linebacker spot. I think he's going to grow into that. He can be the proverbial quarterback of the defense, and because of that athleticism, he can make plays all over the field. You almost feel like he can be a bit of a safety linebacker combo with his size and speed. And so I see the probably most experienced member of Stanford's defense, along with Malik Antoine and maybe a couple others, as the most important member of Stanford's defense because you really need both that senior leadership in this pandemic year and that captain of the defense in the middle who you can trust in a way similar to Bobby Okereke was a couple years ago, a guy you could trust to make plays against the run, against the pass, and kind of be an anchor for your defense in a way that even a defensive lineman or player in the secondary can't be.
And I totally see that. And I'm not going to disagree at all because I think Curtis Robinson is absolutely capable of being that player. But I do want to talk a little bit more about Thomas Booker because I'm so excited about him. I was looking at highlights of him. I saw one that said Thomas Booker cooking. I expected to see him beating a guy off the edge. Nope, it was just Thomas Booker cooking in the kitchen, which I thought was hilarious. But this is a guy with a ton of potential, someone who's so fun to talk to. But going back to that physicality that we're seeing, and obviously I'm not going to prorate like you did. I'm not going to give someone 100 tackles in a short season, right? But in last year, he had 50 tackles, 4 sacks, I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Booker this season in the short season went and had 4 sacks again, because I think he's that good and he's going to start winning those one-on-one battles, right? Lance Anderson has been talking about it. They need guys to start winning those one-on-one battles. They can't rely on blitzes. They can't rely on stunts. They need people to start winning those battles. And if I'm looking to anyone on the defense to be doing that, it's absolutely Thomas Booker. And I think that's where everything is going to start, right? Curtis Robinson is going to play a huge role this season. And I think the return of Ricky Miezon and Jacob Mangum-Farrar is going to make that inside backer core that much better. And then Robinson in his second year at the position, he's going to take leaps and bounds. No surprise about that. But Booker now, in his third year at the spot, actually has some of the most experience on this defense. As I mentioned, he's going to be a captain this year. That's why I'm looking to him to really set the tone. And I'm so excited to see what he's going to be able to do out there on November 7th, because I honestly think he's the one who's most prepared at this moment.
Well, and I think that Thomas Booker's personality just fits perfectly into a leadership role. I think that we're going to see him step up not only on the field, but off the field as a leader for the team. And leaders are going to be more necessary than ever this season. Bring a team together so they continue to buy into what's required, because you're asking a lot of athletes this season, not only to put themselves at risk, but to severely restrict their lives in the interest of their team. And Thomas Booker strikes me as a guy who would buy right into that and get other guys to buy into it as well. And it's interesting, I think our two answers are answers to Stanford's two biggest defensive problems last season. I mean, Stanford had one of the worst pass defenses in the country. And the issue was number one, getting no pressure on the quarterback, and number two, not being athletic enough at linebacker or in the secondary to hang with wide receivers. You have Paulson Adebo, who obviously he's going to hold his own. He had 4 picks last season, 10 passes defended. But everywhere else at linebacker and secondary was a bit of a liability in coverage. And I think that is startling, but you do have a lot of young talent, including on the back end, that we can talk about some more. But the Curtis Robinson answer to me is also an answer to somebody who can stop tight ends and wide receivers running wild up the middle. The middle of Stanford's defense has been wide open, and people have been missing tackles there. And then all of a sudden, what should be a 5-yard gain turns into a 15-yard gain, and these drives are prolonged. And the bend don't break philosophy counts on making tackles in space. You cannot allow big plays to happen if you're going to play the style of defense Lance Anderson likes to play. But let's talk about some other guys. And since we've talked about the defensive line and linebacker core, who's the most important guy in the secondary to you? Because that's an area where you really don't have the guy, but you do have a lot of returning experience, even if it might be with young players.
There, I'm looking to Kendall Williamson. Honestly, a lot of praise for him in this offseason. They're liking what they're seeing. Obviously, we're not out there watching their practices, but that's who people are really pointing to. So I think if he's making big strides at the safety position, Malik Antoine, obviously a very cerebral guy, but them working together, I think that's the pairing that I'm looking at the most right now. Yeah.
I think you're exactly right to point to the safety position, because I love the combination of Williamson's speed and athleticism and fire. And then you combine that with Malik Antoine's experience, and I think he's a very good safety against the pass. So I think you got a guy who I see as in Williamson as being very good against the run, a guy in Antoine who I see as being very good against the pass. And I mean, when you've had the level of experience he's had in the Pac-12, been starting for years now, I think that you can count on him in the back end of the defense. I'm also going to point to Caillou Blue-Kelly, because he was not expected to get time in his freshman season, but he did. He started the last 9 games, and I think performed pretty well by and large. Had some tough games, but had some very good moments as well, including against Washington. And he's a guy that maybe he can grow into, if not a Debo, then at least a very serviceable Pac-12 corner who you can count on to lock up one side of the field. And I do want to just come back to Curtis Robinson for one more thing. He won a special award in Stanford's football program this past offseason, and that award was for aggressiveness and unheralded efforts. And I think that if all of Stanford's defense can live up to aggressiveness and unheralded efforts this season, I think we could see a significant improvement, because we know there's talent there. It's just talent that has not necessarily seen the level of production that we need to see. And maybe it's coming. And if it does, and combine that with a good defense, a very good passing offense, could be a special season on the farm. But Daniel, the defensive regression we've referenced on the